Okay, we're going to show you guys how to do a ulnar gutter cast or a boxer's cast. Position of function is going to be intrinsic plus with the wrist back about 15 to 20 degrees, MPs at 90, and the IP and the DIP down to 0. Okay, we want to make sure we pad in between any two skin surfaces. I always like to put a little stockinette on the thumb. Then, even though these fingers are not involved, we're going to take a 2-inch piece of stockinette that we've put slits up each side, and we're going to lay that there so that way we have a nice soft padded edge around the fingers. Okay. Then we take our stockinette. We've made 2 cuts. We have one for the fingers that are going to pop out because these fingers are not going to be in it, and then we also have a cut for the thumb. So hopefully that makes sense. So we got that and sorry, that. Helps when you have a helpful patient who knows what to do. Okay. So double check, make sure your padding's still intact. Let's just pull it up. Some people will use like buddy tape and use tape above and below the joint to kind of hold the padding in, but as long as you've done it, and make sure you tell the patient not to pull it out. So then we're going to get our patient in their position. I think it's helpful. I actually like to show them how it's going to be, and then put the padding on, and then get the position. So it's kind of a funky little hoof thing going on right here. So we're going to get your wrist back. The farther the wrist back is back, the easier that the MPs come down to 90 degrees. So you can kind of see how that happens. If you're having a hard time getting the MPs to 90, just tilt that wrist back and it happens a lot easier. So, okay, so we're just going to take our padding. I'm using a gigantic padding because that's what I have. I recommend 2-inch. It'll make your life easier. When you're wrapping any type of material, you really should go distal to proximal. In this case, I started at the wrist, but we should be okay. When we're going to go with the fiberglass, it's a good idea to go distal to proximal. So she's going to keep helping me by maintaining that correct position. One of the hardest things to do with this particular cast is to get this knuckle here. These fingers, again, are not going to be in it. A little trick you can do is twist the stockinette and fold it back over itself, and it's kind of out of your way. So basically, we just want to make sure that this knuckle is really well padded. A lot of people will say, like, the more padding, the better, and that's not necessarily the case. We really do want to try to stay at a 50% overlap if we can. Too much padding will compress, the swelling will go down when the patient's in the cast, and then atrophy, of course, will make the cast very loose. So that makes it a bad cast. So we want to make sure we get good padding there. I like to also make bumpers, so just folding a little piece of padding around the edges, and that kind of protects the patient. Basically what I'm doing is just folding over and then wrapping it around. Just makes a nice soft padded edge for when we fold back that layer there. Okay, so everything looks good. I make sure that I've got it well padded. If there's something, a wrinkle, or if there's some padding missing somewhere, I call them clear spots, you can kind of take a little piece of padding and kind of tack it wherever it's needed, but it looks pretty good. Check for ulnar styloid. That's a real bony prominence that tends to get rubbed raw a lot in these casts. So it looks pretty good. Pretty good. And then again, we want to be able to fold the stockinette down over itself. So kind of do all your fixes now before you get your fiberglass on. All right, so don't forget your gloves. That's not good. I'm going to roll with 2-inch. I think 2 packs of 2-inch should be enough, usually, depending on the size of the patient. The reason why you might end up having to use a second roll is because it is a difficult cast to maneuver, and sometimes your roll gets hard in the middle of rolling. So for her, I'm just going to have her just open up her hand, relax a little bit, so that we can kind of maneuver around there. Then we'll get her down once we're done. So just one dip in cool water. I'm still trying to get her here. So we're going to start distal, go proximal, tip of her fingers. And don't forget to check for capillary refill before you apply the cast, so that way when you're done with the cast, you can check again to make sure that you've got the cap refill. Scissors. I like to cut in between the web space. Some people fold. Doesn't matter. That's kind of a personal preference thing. want to make sure, and this is what I see a lot happening, is the finger isn't necessarily connected to the hand. I see people do that sometimes. So just really spend most of your roll up around the fingers in the hand, because that's where our injury is. So we really want to make sure that's nice and immobilized. We're just kind of doing a figure of 8 around that area. We'll come and capture the rest of this. So we want to go around the fingers and then again through the web space also. Hit the hand. Alright, so really I spent a whole roll in the fingers and hand. But that's good. We'll capture the rest of it later. Now the most important part, you want to kind of laminate the cast and you want to get the position correct. Remember she's at her 90 degrees at her MP, 0 at the IP and the DIP. We're going to do our second layer just to make this kind of a thicker cast. Obviously we have to go all the way down. Remember perimeters are 2 finger breadths from the antecubital space. So this one's going to be a little bit shorter, but it's okay. Make sure you leave a nice little padded edge of the cast. If you have too much, you can always cut it off. Laminate your edge a little bit. We'll do a small interosseous mold. You don't need anything major, but this just kind of helps to make sure that it's in a neutral form, and just helps to keep the patient from moving as much. Okay, so now this part's kind of important. We're folding back all of our edges. Here's where you need to make sure you have a layer of padding. You see here how the padding sticking out farther than the fiberglass. Make sure you have that because it's going to really make a difference for the patient. So here's where we're going to just kind of fold back our edge. Be able to see the tip of the patient's fingers. We can check for capillary refill. This is where this little guy comes in. So remember we said these aren't going to be in there. We're just going to fold this edge down. You might need to trim some of this. But you can trim this down and then lay it flat so that this can just be a nice soft edge too. So you see how we can just lay this down. Of course, this can all be trimmed. It's a good idea to keep it long so that when you are rolling the cast, that the fiberglass from the ring and the little finger don't get all over these fingers too. You can always make this one a little longer too, because I know one of the bigger complaints we get from this is when the patient rubs this finger against their ring, sometimes it'll get raw, but you can work around that with some moleskin or whatever. And then we'll fold down our little thumb. Remember the thumb's not in it either. If you have a hard time with like wrinkles here or this not staying down, just you could take tape to tape it down. I know some people do that. And then we'll stretch our edge here on the bottom. Again, we have more than 2 finger breadths, but it's okay on this ulnar gutter cast. And this is a point when we ask the patient how they're feeling. They're not going to, obviously be 100%, but make sure that there's nothing in there stabbing them, pinching them, that this isn't maybe too tight or anything's going on that's too bad. It will be snug, but it shouldn't be too terribly tight. So if there's any modifications we need to make, now is when we need to do it rather than after we've done our final roll. So, okay, so we've got all our edges, and now's when we're going to do what we call our money roll, or the final roll, make the cast look nice. This little guy doesn't really know. Sometimes you got to just get creative. Okay. All right, now we're going to do our final roll. The material is completely hard, so at this point it doesn't matter if we start distal and go proximal, right? This is just for looks. So we're going to use a pretty glue, and we're just going to kind of polish it off, make it look nice. Coming through the web space, I do a little cut. Want to make sure you lay down all your edges. I like to flip this and make sure everything's nice. You might need to use 2. I'm going to try to do it with 1. Look okay on that side? Looks good. want to try to kind of grab all of the edges of the stockinette. If you can. I'm sorry. I'm getting my face too close. Don't punch your patient in the face. Okay. If you have a hard time with it laying down, you can always just do a little clip in the material to make it lay, but it's okay. Captured all of the stockinette. If you have any fray edges that you have because you cut the material, you can trim that off or even take a nail file to that after the fact, after it dries. Laminate all your edges. This, how's it feel? I mean, for
Feels like it's in the right position.
like if you had to be stuck like that. Yes, feels okay. So here it is, y'all. On the gutter cast or a boxer's cast. Good luck.